I got my hands on this Drexel Heritage tallboy. Let's see what I can do with it. Here I am again, JRP Custom Painted Furniture, and I'm Jack. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to my channel, please do so, and stay tuned to see what we can do with this. Here it is again. Isn't it beautiful? It's got a little bit of damage on it, a little bit of scratches everywhere, and the top has a huge crack right across the front. So we're going to have to do a fair bit of repairs to this, but I'm excited. It's a beautiful Drexel Heritage and it's just going to turn out amazing. I know it. So as usual, we're going to start by removing this hardware. Now, I'm not going to use this again. I know this is traditional hardware, but this batwing style, it's just not my thing. Now, while you're watching me take off this batwing hardware, let me give you a little bit of background on this piece. Now, I bought this off Facebook Marketplace for $10. It was an absolute steal. Now, the gentleman that I bought it from has just moved down from Canberra in Australia to Melbourne, Australia. So for those of you who don't know Australian states, that's a state away. It's pretty much from the Australian Capital Territory, ACT, to Victoria. So he was actually moving down and brought it with him. And he used to work at the American Embassy in Canberra. Now, this piece was obtained from the American Embassy along with another sort of sister piece, I suppose you would say, that he brought down with him. They were apparently doing over a part of the embassy, and this was some of the old furniture that was there. So he managed to score 2 of the Drexels and brought them down, but I missed out on the second one on Marketplace, which I'm still a bit annoyed about, but that's okay. We got one, and that's the main thing. So obviously, now I'm giving a really good clean. Now, I don't know where this previous owner actually stored this piece because it had a lot of dead wasps inside it. So it must have been nearby in a wasp's nest or something. But we'll clean all that out, and it had a hideous smell to it. So that's another project that we're going to have to tackle. So let's address this top crack. I don't know how this got into the piece of wood, but that's okay. We're going to get rid of it. So I've grabbed my Orbital sander and I've got 100 grit sandpaper on it. I'm going to sand down this top of the unit and just see if I can even out this crack. And then we're going to fill it and try and smooth it right out so that it's obviously not visible and it doesn't affect the sturdiness of the unit, which it doesn't anyway, but that's okay. So as you can see, I've sanded it back and I've just evened out this large crack. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my builder's bog. Now, for those of you in America and other places around the world, it's the same as Bondo, but in Australia, we call it builder's bog. We don't have Bondo in Australia. So it's the same sort of thing. You have the main fill and then you use the hardener to attach, mix it up, and you've got to use it pretty quickly, obviously, because it dries super duper fast. So only mix up the amount that you need for the area that you're working on, because if it dries, obviously it's unusable. You want to get it onto the piece and quickly in place. Now this Builder's Bong is an amazing product. It dries so quickly and so hard that it makes the job easy because you're not hanging around waiting for your filler to actually harden. So already I'm grabbing my Orbital sander. I've still got 100 grit sandpaper on it, and I'm just going over the Builder's Bong now to try and smooth it out. And then we'll be able to establish whether we need to apply any more filler just to even out any of the surfaces, or if there's any little air pockets that we may have encountered. Now that we've sanded the entire top of this unit and it's nice and smooth, we've found a couple of little places that require some Timbermate Woodfiller. So I'm just going to grab that and fill up these little surface scratches, I suppose you would call them, just to make sure that everything is super duper smooth on the top. Now moving on to the drawers, I'm just giving each of these drawers a good scuff sand. Now a scuff sand is pretty much just roughing up the surface so that your paint has something to adhere to. You can't have a shiny surface and expect the paint just to stick to it. You need to rough it up so it's got some sort of teeth that the paint can sink into. So I've got 100 grit on my Orbital sander and I'm just going over the top of these drawers just to make sure that they're all roughed up, ready for primer. I've just grabbed a 100 grit sanding pad and I'm just going into those hard to reach places that the Orbital sander wasn't as good at. So I'm just hand sanding this part just to make sure that all of the smooth surface is now roughed up, ready. And before we go any further and start with our primer, we need to remove the dust that we just created from sanding it back and scuff sanding. So I've just got a general microfiber cloth and I'm just giving it a good wipe down to remove all this dust so that the paint will adhere to the surface of the piece rather than the dust particles. I've just grabbed my air compressor that's attached with my little air gun, and I'm just giving the unit a really thorough spray out just to make sure any little bits of debris is removed from the unit, because obviously I use a spray gun when I'm painting units. So if you're pushing air through the spray gun and it's going into the unit, it's going to make any dust particles that you have inside the unit fly around willy-nilly and potentially get into your paint, so we don't want that to happen. So I've just given it a really good spray down with the air. And now we're moving on to primer. Here with the primer, I'm using my Wagner spray gun. Now, for those of you who watch me regularly, you'll know that I love my Wagner spray gun. It's so fast, it's so fun to use, and it just makes the job so easy to do. So the primer we are using is the Zinsser 123 water-based primer in white. So now I'm just using my Wagner spray gun and spraying it all on nice and evenly to try and get a good coverage for my primer. Now with the Zinsser primer, it gives fantastic adhesion. I generally don't need to worry too much about anything I apply on top of this primer because it really gives me a great finish. So in this case, I'm actually only going to do one coat of primer. Now, if I was going a light colour, I would do 2 coats to make sure that this dark wood is completely covered. But because I'm going a black colour, as you can see here, I'm just starting with the first coat of black. I really only need 1 coat of primer because I'm putting a dark colour over the top. So I've got the black in the spray gun and we're having a little bit of a problem. Not with my Wagner spray gun, but I must have some sort of blockage or something in my spray gun, and it's driving me insane because I'm just not getting anything out. As you can see, I grabbed my roller and I quickly rolled over it just to smooth out the clumps that was coming out of the spray gun because I don't want that to dry. So if I roll it smooth with a roller, then at least I can just spray over the top of it and not worried about it. So I've changed my nozzle and I'm going vertically now just to see whether I can sort of clear this blockage, and it's just not working. I'm playing around with it a little bit more, changing things up, trying to clear it out, and we're just not getting the flow that I need to get in order to complete this piece smoothly. So let's clean out the entire spray gun again and start from scratch. And as you can see, it's working perfectly, yay! Now we can actually get this first coat of colour onto the unit. So as you can see, I'm just going with a straight black. Now, one point to remember when you're using a spray gun is to try and overlap each run by about 30%. This will give you a solid, even coverage with your colour. And although you're going to do 2, maybe 3, sometimes even 4 coats of your main colour, you still want to try and get a nice solid coverage each pass you do. While you're watching me paint this unit, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel and hit that notifications button. That will allow you to be notified every time I release a video. So please guys, every little bit counts. If you could like and subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. This is why I love using my Wagner spray gun. Look at the finish that it gives you. It is silky smooth. When you don't have any issues, obviously, the flow is perfect and the finish is just to die for, really. It is so much faster than painting and rolling. Don't get me wrong, I paint and I roll certain pieces, but when you get a finish like this on a piece with a spray gun, it just makes you want to use it more. So if you haven't purchased a spray gun and it is something you're looking at, I highly recommend it. I don't have the best of the best. I have an affordable spray gun from Wagner that does its job and it does it perfectly, and I have no problems with it. So you don't have to go out and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on it. It's just not necessary. I highly recommend in between every single coat of paint that you give each unit a light sand. Now I use 240 grit sandpaper pads and I just rub over it nice and lightly just to remove any bumps that might be in the spray or any little excesses that may have come out. I just like to make it nice and smooth so that each coat has a beautiful flat surface to adhere to. So highly recommend 240 grit or above. Some people use anywhere up to 400, some people use up to 600. It's whatever you prefer. I'm happy with my 240. Mind you, my sanding pads have been used for quite some time. So in all honesty, they're probably up around the 300 mark now because they've been used so much and they've worn out. However, it is a 240 grit sanding paper pad. And then once I've done that, I'm ready for my second coat of paint. As you can see here, Wagner spray gun out again, and we're going in for round 2. Now, I've got great coverage on this unit from just 2 coats, so I'm going to stick with 2 coats only. Once again, I've grabbed my 240 grit sandpaper pad and I've run over the unit nice and lightly just to make sure it's nice and smooth, and wiped back any excess dust. And now I'm actually coming in with my drawers in this time, and I'm going in for round 3 just to make sure that the drawers have got their final coat before our top coat goes on. So I'm not doing the sides, I'm not doing the top, I'm just doing the drawers in the unit just to make sure they've got their final coat. Now that the unit is completely finished, I'm giving it another light sand with my 240 grit sandpaper pad, and then I'll wipe it clean with a microfiber cloth before I go in with my top coat. So the top coat that I'm using today, and I use on most of my pieces, is the Bondal Monocel Water-Based Clear Varnish in Satin. And that gives any paint, even a matte paint, just a nice light satin finish that just gives the final touch to each piece. Now with this clear varnish, I always do a minimum of 2 coats. I like to make sure my pieces are completely protected. So depending on what piece you're actually doing will determine how many coats you want to do. If you've got a piece of furniture that you're redoing that's in a very high volume area and it's going to get a lot of traffic and a lot of things placed on top of it, whatever the case may be, you might want to do 3 coats, possibly even 4 coats of varnish. However, I'm only sticking with 2 in this because this is a tall boy. It might get some things placed on top of it, but that's pretty much the end of it. So now we're moving on to the hardware. I've got my hole punch jig here and I'm lining it up with each drawer and creating my holes for my hardware. This piece of equipment, if you're looking for a low cost piece of equipment that makes hardware simple, I highly recommend a hole punch jig. They are really cost effective and they make your job so much easier. You don't have to measure things out, apply masking tape, do everything else like that. You can literally set the measurements for one drawer, move it to the next and replicate it each time. It just makes the job so much quicker. Now cast your minds back to how this unit looked before I started. It had a massive crack in the top. It had the old school batwing hardware on it. But look at what we can do with this unit with a little bit of TLC. Here she is. Brand new hardware in brushed antique gold, a matte black finish with a satin top coat. It's just beautiful. Guys, if you have any questions at all or any comments, please write them below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye.